It's time to take a look at the senator and governor approval ratings for the third quarter 2025. So it's been 3 months. Here we are again on Morning Consult. We use them because they cover all 50 states at once, but definitely take a look at other sources. So we'll start this time with the governors. And here we are with the map. Green is good, red is bad. And you're not seeing things. There's really only one state in the red. That is Iowa. Kim Reynolds, 12 points underwater. The darker the shade of green, the higher the approval rating is going to be for the governor. So you can see some of these are going to be the ones you're expecting. So let's get down into it and see what the key takeaways are. No surprise here, Phil Scott of Vermont, he's the top governor. His approval rating is a staggering 75%. And he's in the top spot for the 13th consecutive quarter. I don't know if he's going to run again, but it seems like he's as close to unbeatable as you can get. Then we've got Kim Reynolds. She's the most unpopular governor for the 7th quarter in a row. She's not seeking re-election, so it's not super important, but she's managed to get on and stay on the wrong side of voters in Iowa. And then it says Janet Mills enters the Senate race as the country's most unpopular Democratic governor. It goes on to say she is 77 years old, and that is actually older than Susan Collins, who she's challenging. She's going to take on Graham Plattner, maybe others in a primary. We know Plattner has been under fire for some of his past posts. We got to see how that populist energy competes with the more establishment current governor, Janet Mills. So let's go down here. Take a look at the top 10 most popular. Again, it's Phil Scott at 75%. 19% disapprove of him. The runner-up is Mark Gordon in Wyoming. He's at 71 and 18. The states that round out the top 10 here are North Dakota, Hawaii, Kentucky, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Idaho, and Massachusetts. A few of these governors are on the ballot next year, should they choose to run for re-election. And a lot of these are familiar faces, and it's going to be the same thing on the unpopular side. Kim Reynolds is technically the only one of two governors underwater. She's at 41 to 53. Janet Mills is at 50 to 45. Dan McKee in Rhode Island is the only other one underwater. His approval is actually lower than Reynolds. He's at 40, but his disapproval is lower. It's at 44. Now, as for the rest of these 10 most unpopular, most of them are still in double digits favorable. A few of them are in single digits, like Mike Braun in Indiana, Tina Kotek in Oregon, and Kevin Stitt in Oklahoma. But if you look at number 10 here, Ron DeSantis in Florida, he's supposed to be the 10th most unpopular, but he's still 16 points above water at 55.39. So it's actually tough to get underwater according to Morning Consult. But the reason DeSantis is number 10 is because that 39% is apparently the 10th highest, even though he still seems fairly popular along with most of the rest of these 10. The thing to point out down here is Mike Braun of Indiana is one of the newer governors that's on the most unpopular list. He had an 11-point decline since the first quarter. And then you've also got Josh Green here, who edges out Andy Beshear as the most popular Democrat. Then down here, of course, you could take a look at all 50 governors. So this will show you the popularity history of any governor. For example, I've got Tate Reeves up here of Mississippi. Reeves was known to be fairly unpopular, especially leading up to his re-election back in 23. But now, over the past year or so, his popularity has gone up. So he's on the right track there, and you could do the same for any of the other governors. So there's a little bit more here. They talk about Newsom. His approval rating is up 8 points since the first quarter. Even Kathy Hochul in New York, she's up to 53%. That's a record high for her. And they note Spencer Cox in Utah has apparently had it tick down from 54 to 52. Then under that, we've got the methodology. The margin of error is going to be higher in states with less population. It's plus or minus 6 in a state like Wyoming and plus or minus 1 in California. So nothing too shocking here. Reynolds still looks terrible, but again, she's on her way out of office. Let's take a look at the upper chamber in Congress. Here's the senators. And there's going to be a lot of similarities between this map and the governors. For example, if you go to Iowa, it's one of only a couple of states in the red, but they're not going to be outdone by Kentucky. The leadership there is even more underwater. And for whatever reason, you can't even hover over Alabama here. So let's see what we've got for the takeaways. At the top, we've got Bernie Sanders. He's regained the top spot from fellow Senator Peter Welch. He's at 71% approve. And on the extreme other end, you know by now it's Mitch McConnell, who's rock bottom for 19 quarters in a row. He's at 60% disapprove. His political career is over. He's going to be done next year. And he's certainly going out in style with consistently despicable approval ratings. How about Susan Collins in Maine? That's going to be a huge race next year, as we talked about, with potentially Janet Mills. Her approval rating is at just 36%. or disapproval is at 56. So those are going to be the biggest numbers since going back to 2017. It's unclear if Collins is going to be able to pull it out yet again. These approval ratings would have you think she can't. But if that were actually the case, I think she would have decided not to run by now, and she would have had some more primary opposition. Dems have their eye on Maine as a big pickup opportunity. And finally, how about John Fetterman here in Pennsylvania? His approval rating is at 48%, but beneath the surface, his support from Dems has declined from 72 to 53. But on the other end, with Republicans, it's gone from 27 to 48. So him and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, those are the two U.S. senators with the most crossover appeal. Depending on which side you're on, you're gonna like it or you're gonna hate it. Dems tend to be more of a fan of Murkowski in Alaska, but Republicans increasingly becoming a bigger fan of Fetterman in Pennsylvania. And down here, we've got the top 10. And usually states that have lower populations have the potential for higher approval ratings for their representation. That's reflected here as both U.S. senators in Vermont are number 1 and 2, but you've also got Barrasso and Lummis in Wyoming not far behind. You could also say the same thing about the 2 senators in Hawaii. So what about on the other end, who's the most unpopular? Well, after McConnell and Collins, it's Joni Ernst in Iowa. She's at 38 to 48. Then you've got Ron Johnson, Deb Fischer, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Chuck Grassley, Pete Ricketts, Tim Sheehy, and Tammy Baldwin rounding out the bottom 10. But just like the governors, almost all of them still have a net positive rating. And after that, they mention Ed Markey in Massachusetts. He's going to be facing a primary challenge from the much younger Seth Moulton, but Markey is getting the thumbs up from 57% of Massachusetts voters. And then down here, we've got the full list of all 100. The one I've got pulled up here is Mark Kelly in Arizona. When he came into office, he started off at 46 to 35, and he's improved a little bit. He's at 53 to 33. He's not up for re-election, but if he were, he might be a little bit tough to beat. And we'll wrap it up here on the bottom. It says Jon Ossoff of Georgia is the most vulnerable Senate Democrat next year. His approval rating has taken a slight dip from 53 to 51, and his disapproval is up from 32 to 34. And there's 2 special elections next year in the U.S. Senate. Ashley Moody in Florida and John Husted in Ohio. They're more popular than not, but they also have a bunch of unknowns because they got into office this year. So that pretty much wraps up where we're at for Morning Consult. A lot of this is the same stuff every time. Vermont and Wyoming dominate, and on the other end, it's the same thing with Kim Reynolds and Mitch McConnell. I highly recommend taking a look at more local polling from colleges or media outlets. Sometimes that might be much better than what we're looking at here. But either way, we'll see where we're at in the 4th quarter in the next update. But for now, let me know in the comments. How popular is your governor or your U.S. senators? What do you think about Phil Scott or Bernie Sanders? How about Kim Reynolds, Mitch McConnell, John Fetterman, Susan Collins, or Janet Mills? Let me know what you think down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to help support the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.